Hey, how you doing out there in YouTube land? This is Stiletto coming at you from the Wild Wild West. Hope everybody's getting ready for their holidays and getting ready for Christmas time. It's December 21st right now. I know I said I wasn't going to put on any more videos this year, but I thought I'd just put out a real quickie on my frenzy that stays in my drawer. You guys didn't see this in my end of the year video because the knife wasn't finished yet, and I just recently finished it because people were asking me about polishing and stuff like that, and I want to leave a couple of links of when I first started working on this one. I think it might have been a couple of years ago or something like that. And then it just sort of got sat, you know, for a long time or whatever after I damaged the blade a little bit, and I decided to go ahead and redo the whole knife. But anyway, this one you guys have seen, and this video is about a little bit about polishing, talking about polishing. And this one's the one with 75/75 aluminum handle scales that I polish. This was a bear because it's really hard to get that EDP plating off of the handle scales. It's really hard to get the plating off. I had to use chemicals and things like that to get it off. So it's really hard to do this one. But once you get the plating off, the aluminum underneath was pretty nice. Lots of times you get the plating or finish off of something and you find like rough finishes, uneven finishes underneath the finish. It's like they hide a lot of stuff with the finish. But actually on the Ti-Lite 6s with the 70/75 aluminum handles, once you get that finish off, actually underneath it's pretty nice, and all you have to do is really just polish it out with wet sandpaper, polishing wet sandpaper. Start like about on 800 or so and go all the way up to like 2500. And then buff it all out. Once you get the scratches really nice and fine, you can buff it all out. I use just buffing compounds from Home Depot. I go to Home Depot to get the buffing compounds, and then I also use Mothers. I also use chrome and aluminum polish. That's like my final polish will be with the Mothers. But first I will go through the black, the brown, the white, and then the green buffing compounds. And then I'll finish up with Mothers because Mothers puts that extra little bit of shine on it. But that's how I do that. And it's just time consuming. There's no easy way to do it or whatever. Now if you have a table buffer, one that's mounted to a table, affixed to a table, it'd be a lot easier. I use a hand drill with buffing pads on it. Just a common everyday hand drill that you use for all sorts of different uses or whatever. And then I put a buffing pad on it. I just buff it out by hand. Like I said, it's very time consuming. That's the reason why I don't do it to every knife. But certain knives I wanted to do it to. And this one started out as a project knife. This is the frenzy that I carry all the time. Started out as a project knife, and then I use this one all the time, and I got the blade dull. And then when I went to go try to resharpen, I scratched up the blade a little bit with the sharpening stones, and so I didn't like that, and so I completely disassembled it again and took out the scratches out the blade, and then just totally polished it, because the part that got scratched was where the marking, the labeling is, and so that all had to go. But anyway, this is my finished frenzy. This is what it looks like now. It's completely mirror polish. I did it all by hand. And the final polish was with Mothers. Get that nice mirror polish. And this is going up to 2500 grit sandpaper. And as you know, I polished the back spacer, the 6061 aluminum heat treated aluminum back spacer, and the stainless steel lock bar. That's all been polished, inside and out. This one used to stick on me. I don't know if you remember in the first videos. It's the reason why I started working on it, because it was sticking. It would go into like a what do you call it, a fixed blade mode when you open it up sometimes. It doesn't do it no more. Works perfectly now, but it took a lot of work to get this one right. And this was my only frenzy that was like that. I have 3 other frenzies that are totally stock, and none of those ever had that problem. This is my very first one. This is a CTSX HP frenzy. The first run of frenzies. And maybe they didn't have the machining just right for the locking part or whatever. But it worked. Mine works nice now though. I just want to show this to you. I'm going to link a couple other videos onto this video too, where you can go and see what I went through, or the beginnings of what I went through or whatever, and what I did to this knife. The handle scales have been done with Rit dye, and they didn't come out all the way black. They came out almost all the way black, and then after they dried off, I wet sanded it down a little bit. That's why it has this effect. It looks just, this one was one of the ones that was like white, gray, and black. And then I dyed it with Rit dye. I was trying to make the handles all the way black, but they didn't come out all the way black, and I didn't like them the way they looked, so I sanded it down a little bit. And after I sanded it down, I liked the way it looked, because that's where it had a worn look to it. Looks like wood, sort of. A worn wood look. And I liked that way that looked, and I left it like that ever since. And I think this knife is beautiful. I think it looks beautiful now. But I had to take off the frenzy and the labeling that was on this side to get it to the mirror polish. It's absolutely beautiful now. And functions flawlessly. And yes, I did get it sharp again. But one thing I could say about these knives, the frenzies, they're not the easiest ones to sharpen. I had to use the curved stones, not the flat stones, in order to sharpen it. And I had to use my old Lansky sharpening kit with the curved stones. That's the way I was able to sharpen it. And those aren't diamond stones, they're like the regular ceramic stones, I think you would call them. And they actually wear out pretty quickly on against CTS-6HP. So I don't know if they make curved diamond stones or whatever. That would probably be the way you'd want to go. And I used fine edges so I get a polished edge. I started at about a medium grit stone, and then went to a fine grit stone, then went to ultra fine grit stone, and then stropped it with a leather strop and buffing compound. But it was a lot of work though. It was a lot of work to get off those horizontal lines, the ones that were running the length of the blade, that were on the flat. That's what took the most time on this one, to get rid of those lines and make it just all polished. I'm going to put this one out there, and I'm going to link other videos when I first start working on this one, so you guys can see it, how it looked when it first started out, and you can sort of go through all the stuff. The only thing that you don't really see on camera, because it's just too time consuming, is the sanding. The wet sanding takes forever. I mean, it's not something that you're going to do instantly. If you want to do something like this, unless you got like power tools and all the proper things like a actual knife maker or somebody would have, if you're going to just use hand tools and wet sand by hand and stuff like that, like I do, it takes a lot of time. It's not something that you're going to do right away, and I'd only recommend it like if you mess up a knife. And just pretty much all the knives that I have that are polished are knives I've messed up. And then because I'm kind of OCD, so I'll go to them and I'll just polish out all the scratches out the blade and stuff like that, and because I hate beat up looking things. I don't know. That's just me. It's my own little issue I have. I like things looking like they're supposed to look. I sort of wish that they would have made these from the factory. Some of them polished. I sort of wish that they would have made them with CTS-6HP coating. I mean, not the CTS-6HP coating, the DLC coating. That's what I meant. Diamond Light coating. But they never made an all blacked out version. I'd have been all over it this one if they had an all blacked out version. Because the Frenzy is one of my favorite. I would call it a modern day stiletto. It's like the Ti-Lite. To me, it's like having a Ti-Lite 6 with a triad lock. With a really good lock. I love my Ti-Lite 6s, but I'm not a big fan of liner locks. But I love the knife so much, I just overlooked that and get it anyway. Ti-Lite 6s were the first knives that turned me on to cold steel knives. So, not Ti-Lite 6s, but the Ti-Lites, period. They weren't making the 6-inch one when I first got my first one. But there's my Frenzy. And this one's in my EDC drawer too. Because I always like to have a Frenzy in my EDC drawer. It just hasn't been in there lately because I've been working on it. And the other ones I treat like more like collectors. This is my user Frenzy. The one I've actually carried a lot. I think the Frenzy is an awesome Mega Blade because it's one of the more awesome Mega Blades because it's got the triad lock. It's got a great grip. It's nice and slender and flat. So it doesn't bother you in your pocket. It only weighs 5.6 ounces, so it's super light, especially for a knife this long and this size. I highly recommend the Frenzy. Frenzy is one of my favorites. And I'm glad that this one will be back in my box now. It's all done, finished, repaired, and set up the way I want it. They'll go in there alongside with this one. My other one that I've customized I really like. Number 154. This one, the only thing that's customized on this one is the handle scales. All the other parts have just been swapped out with the other knife that this blade originally came with the green, OD green Zyx handles and black hardware. It's just been, I mean, it didn't come with black hardware. It came with this hardware, the polished hardware. But the other one I swapped it out with, now the OD green one has black hardware and a standard blade that this knife came with. I think it's an Oz 8 blade. EDP plated Oz 8 blade. I absolutely love this one. I know they probably won't be making these anymore. The crisp blades. If you have a way to get one, I would get one. I think it's going to be an awesome collector. But these are my two big, what I would call stilettos I keep in my EDC drawer. This one's the one that gets carried though. This one doesn't really get carried. I carry the Frenzy a lot. The reason why, because it's light and it's big. It doesn't weigh me down. And I'm an outdoorsman, so I can claim that this is a fishing knife. if the police ever saw it in my pocket or whatever, like, oh yeah, that's my fishing knife. These are for fishing, cutting bait, and when I go striper fishing and channel cats. And these are for fishing all the time, for making cut bait or cleaning fish or whatever. I think it's a little bit easier to get away with that with this one than it is with the Espada. Or a Counterpoint XL. Or a Ti-Lite. Because this one sort of looks like it could be used for fishing and stuff. Anyway. I just thought I'd make a quick video showing you guys this one. Now that it's a finished product. All hand polished. Took me a long time to do it. CTS XHP is not as easy to polish as Oz 8. Oz 8, it probably would have took me like half the time to do what I did to this knife. Oz 8 knives are easy to polish and they're easy to refinish or easy to resharpen. Can't say the same thing for CTS XHP because the steel is a harder steel and it's harder to resharpen and it's harder to polish and it's harder to get the little scratches out of it because the steel is more resistant. And when you buff it, you have to constantly keep dipping it in water because the steel gets warm. So you always want to dip it in water to cool it down so you don't lose your temper on the blade. CTS XHP does hold a really nice edge though. But it's not the easiest steel to work with if you want to customize a knife. I can see why a lot of knife makers might use softer steels and stuff like that because if you don't have like diamond tools and diamond diamond stones and stuff like that. It's hard to work with these harder steels. But with a little bit of time and effort, you can do it. It can be done. And it will look just like chrome when you get done with it. That's how this one looks. It looks like chrome. That's not chrome, it's just polished. But it is a finger, when you polish something like this, it will be a fingerprint magnet. When you go to touch the blade, you leave fingerprints. Real easy. Just let you know, if you don't like fingerprints, maybe it's not the type of finish for you. But I think it's cool having some of your blades polished, instead of having all the blades be anti-glare blades or whatever. More tactical. I think it's kind of cool to have some of them that get polished. Anyway, that's all I wanted to show you. Hope everybody's having a great Christmas. Having a great Christmas. We're going to have Christmas over my sister's house. So we'll have a good Christmas this year. Like I said, it's December 21st, Monday, December 21st. This will be my last video before next year. And I just want to tell everybody, ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Peace out, Stiletto.